Welcome to Peter Leg Podcast, where you're empowered to lead, inspire, and influence.
My guest today is Rnold Smith, who is the CEO of the New Westminster Chamber of Commerce. And so welcome, Rnold. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, Peter, for having me.
How long have you been with the Chamber?
That's kind of a two-part question. The first part is I've been on the board with the Chamber for about 5.5 years. But recently I took on the role as CEO, which actually officially started in March of this year, although I was the interim CEO in December of 2019. So a really easy time to take over the Chamber.
I bet. As you probably know, and maybe our viewers don't know, but obviously I wasn't born in Canada. I was born in London, England, but we emigrated to New Westminster. That's where my father wanted to go. And he stayed at the YMCA, which in those days was right opposite the City Hall, the New Westminster City Hall. And so I went to school at Vincent Massey Junior High School and Esther Pearson High School, and played basketball for the Mikes. And so I view myself even today as a New Westminster boy. And I'm very proud of New Westminster and proud of being that sort of connection. I don't do very much for New Westminster, but I view myself as a New Westminster boy because that's where I came to Canada and learned all the things I had to do to be successful. So, wow. So tell me, what would you say are the three biggest concerns or the three biggest challenges facing you specifically at the New Westminster board?
Well, you know, it's interesting because as an organization, the Chamber used to be kind of the only game in town for businesses. But as our society has evolved, you now have business improvement associations. There's an economic development department at the city. And so really one of the big challenges for the Chamber is to really find that niche of delivering value to the community. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges for any chamber is relevancy and really delivering value. So I think it's a really interesting and wonderful challenge. And I think there definitely is a role for the Chamber, but that's definitely one of the challenges is how do you work with those other organizations in a way where we all achieve the same goal, which is really support the local businesses to be successful. So I think that's one. Another one, I mean, you can ask a follow-up question on that if you like.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And I think two is really, it's amazing to me how many people asked me, you know, when I took on the role of CEO is, so what does the Chamber do anyway? And I think to me that was a bit surprising that a lot of people, but actually, especially a certain generation, you know, the younger generation, I think that they don't really have that intimate knowledge of what the Chamber does. And so I think one of the challenges is really tapping into a new generation of individuals to let them know, like, what is it? Like, why would I want to be a part of the Chamber? What does the Chamber do for our community? And you know, like, why should it exist or why should I care? And so I think that's ultimately a big role. And for me personally, I think trying to make the Chamber cool as opposed to, you know, sort of, I guess the stereotype is kind of a stodgy organization that doesn't have a lot of vibrancy to it. And that's a Chamber of Commerce. And so that's really not my personality. And so I think that when the board took me on, they kind of like that idea that there would be this vibrancy and freshness brought to the role and therefore to the business community.
Yeah, I think they call that leadership, and you demonstrate that in every meeting we've been at, and so I see that in you, and I'm sure other people see that in you.
Well, thanks, Peter. I appreciate that. It's certainly interesting, you know, as a leader, how often you battle with your own doubts and you know, and challenges, but really it's just kind of putting one foot in front of the other with the goal in mind. And I find that that's sometimes an underreported element of leadership is how often you're stepping into uncharted territory and how uncomfortable that feels. But yet that's what's necessary for leadership. The leader, you know, goes into, you know, that wilderness first to make sure it's safe for people to follow. But it's certainly not always a comfortable feeling.
I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were asking me how I got to New Westminster, and we came on a Greyhound bus all the way from New York through Chicago to Seattle and over the Patello Bridge. And so one of my questions to you was going to be, or is, how will the new bridge, when it's built, affect business or help business in your city as it will in Surrey and Cloverdale and all those areas?
Well, I think that that's one of the connections right to the downtown core of New Westminster. And if people are avoiding that bridge or only using it or only want to go on it to get to and from their place of residence and work, then I think you're missing the opportunity. But if the connections work better, if it flows smoother, then I think people are more likely to stop and say, you know, what's going on in New Westminster? Or why don't I just pop over the bridge and go out for a dinner at one of our fine restaurants, such as Piva or El Santo downtown, or get a star or a sandwich at Big Star Sandwiches. I mean, I think that a lot of people haven't really discovered kind of the New Westminster and some of the vibrant businesses that have recently come on board in the past few years. So it's a great place to visit. And so I think the hope is that with better connections and more traffic flow, that both sides of the river will experience some sort of local tourism.
Is there a date being set? I know this COVID maybe has affected the beginning of the construction, but is there a date being set for when they're really going to begin building the bridge and conclusion? Is it a 2 or 3 year project or longer maybe?
Yeah, I think it is a few-year project. It's been a while since I reviewed all the specs, but I know that they've kind of got the final plan in place, and they're just in the process of getting that last bit of feedback and seeing if there's any tweaks. But I think it's moving full steam ahead. So I expect it to be. I think it's about a 2 or 3 year project.
Okay. Now your chamber mission statement is to connect, support, and inspire. Is that your challenge for you to do that? And are you leading that charge to connect, support, and inspire?
I think so. I mean, those 3 words mean a lot to me. So I guess that as the mission of the chamber and the CEO, then I'm the spearhead for that. I think that one of the things that I noticed in business networking is that getting connected is fairly easy. You meet, you have a good conversation, you go around the periphery, and you hand out your cards, and then if you do that quite a bit, you end up with a shoebox full of cards. But that next word, that support piece, I think that's to me what is really the call to action. What can be done after you've gotten connected to really support each other to be more successful? Because I think that one of the things I've always admired about you, Peter, is just your willingness to support others' success, and just how much that's been reciprocated for your own success. And oftentimes in networking, you get that connection and it seems like you want to leap directly to that, okay, now refer me customers, or, be a customer of mine. And sometimes there's an in-between process. And so in terms of supporting, I think one of the things that we look at is, what are the things in between that? Can I learn your elevator pitch? Can I make an introduction? Can I follow you on social media? Can maybe we swap services so I understand what you do and you understand what I do, and then when I talk to someone, I can make that recommendation. It builds that trust. And so those are the kind of activities we're trying to build in New Westminster, really, with the businesses. Is if they're taking those small actions, then inevitably that's what leads to the larger action. And I think that last word, inspire.
You've probably heard of Zig Ziglar.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, I was going to give you a quote that would lead into inspire. Zig Ziglar, who passed away a number of years ago and was a good friend of mine, and we shared the platform a few times at different events that he spoke at. His famous line was, "You can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want in life." And the months and I've known you, I see that's part of your fabric of life. You don't talk about it just like that, but that's really what you're doing. If you can help enough other people get what they want in life, as the CEO of the chamber, they will help get what you want in life.
Well, I think it's it's a great theory, and I believe that in practice it does work, you know, and I think ultimately it's also a path to happiness. You know, the more that you live for making others successful, I think that that inherently adds to your own happiness and well-being. But you know, inspiration is an interesting word, you know, to really reach into people, to give them the impetus to take action. You know, oftentimes it's fear that stops us from taking action. And I think that one of the roles that I'm passionate about for the Chamber is how can we be taking brave action so that others are also inspired to take brave action? How can we try and influence the community to work more closely together, to you know, ultimately take new actions so that as a whole we are all more successful? And I think that that's you know, it's certainly a call to action for me, that inspire piece, because it's certainly not a simple thing.
Yeah. Well, you're a pretty inspirational person every time we've had breakfast or lunch or a meeting, and so you inspire me, and I look to that to the people that I meet, and if they do that, then you're attracted to them, and you're attracted to their mission, and you're attracted to what they're trying to do, and you want to help them. That's how it works. So, so what one thing would you like to get out of this short session today? What one thing could impact your chamber in New Westminster?
I think ultimately it's really that first part, which I think we've already gotten there, and that's to really let people know, you know, that there's kind of this fresh new approach that we're taking at the Chamber here in New West. You know, one of the hashtags that I've adopted is not business as usual. And I guess that was fortune telling, because once, of course, the pandemic hit, that certainly was the case. But I really looked at making those innovations. I started a digital mastermind group, you know, right at the very first thing. So in early December. And of course, that turned into a very valuable platform once people couldn't meet in person. And so going virtual was something that I thought that, you know, we should do as just a standard operating procedure. But of course, now that's really the only option for events. Even if you do want to do in-person events at a small scale, there's still a lot of reluctance out there to do that. So I think the one thing is you've already accomplished, which is, you know, as a chamber, we are focused on, you know, really helping as many people as possible, as many businesses as possible, and not-for-profit organizations and artists, because I think that ultimately they're all part of the fabric of the business community in New West. You know, we're looking at the impacts of this pandemic, and really as an organization working every day to mitigate those. There was just this news announced yesterday or the day before that Cartwright Jewelers, who has been in one of New Westminster's longest standing businesses, Susan's retiring. And so it looks like that organization is going to be closing. And, you know, so it's, I don't know if that's personally, I haven't spoken to Susan about it yet. I don't know if it's an impact of the pandemic. I would assume that there might have some influence on that, but ultimately, you know, we have these beautiful organizations that make up the fabric of our community. And I think that it's really easy for us to go to the default, whether we're shopping online or just go to the big box stores. And if we lose all these small businesses, if we lose these, I think that our communities will become much more bland. These are the organizations, when they're successful, that sponsor our sports teams. They're the ones who will support our events. And if we let them go away, then our society will be poorer for it. So that's really our focus as an organization: is what do we need to do to support these organizations to be successful?
I would think, I know, Susan, I would think that if there was any organization in New Westminster that was in need of some kind of funds, whether it was $100 or $1,000 or what have you, their first protocol would be Cartwright Jewelers. And I'm sure that they would come and say yes every time. They are such a good community sponsor, and I know you're going to miss them when they go, and we wish them luck. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Arnold. I appreciate that. My guest has been Arnold Smith, CEO of the New Westminster Chamber of Commerce, affectionately called the Royal City. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you for listening to Peterleg Podcast. If you'd like to support this podcast, please log on to peterleg.com.